Hello, and a big welcome to all of you out there and who is seeing and listen to this podcast. I'm glad you are here. For today, we have a special guest from Texas. It's Denise Shannon. A big welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
nice to have you here. And you have something special we want to hear about. Please tell us what you are doing.
So we have a very large dressage and sport horse program for lessons here in Houston, and we are actually located within the city proper. It's kind of a strange and unique setting. We teach about 5,500 lessons a year, which is a significant number, and our program is very inclusive. We do not do therapeutic riding per se that requires additional training or equipment, but we do a fair amount of what I consider to be therapy while we're riding, both dealing with students who have anxiety issues and students who have body image issues. And we spend a lot of time coaching our kids more um, on the fact that they are capable than just scheduling and schooling through the lessons. Although our program is very inclusive and we start with basic horsemanship, our program teaches all the way up through the national level, and we compete very successfully at our national horse shows. And I like to think that the kids who are doing so are gaining some physical and mental um, stability as well as happiness from the lesson program. So that's a little bit about us.
You were talking about you have special horses as well.
Yes, our horses are all Arabian or half Arabian with just a handful of Andalusian or quarter horse types. We have the bigger horses primarily so that we can accommodate larger riders, and we pretty much accept riders of all shapes and sizes. We do have a couple of what we call our unicorns. Our Arabian horses have been doing this for a while, and almost all of our horses have been competitive at the national level in shows. We have one gelding who's 32 this year, and he refuses to be retired if we try, and we have several times, to let him go and just be a horse and go out to pasture. He is very upset by the process. He won't eat and he gets very unhappy. And so when we bring him back in the barn and give him his kids back, he goes back to work acting like a young horse again. So he'd much rather stay in the barn and continue to do his beginner lessons than he would to go outside in the pasture.
That's great. That's great. Otherwise, you would think that Arabian is everybody who talks about Arabian. Oh, they are fearful, and but that's not the case.
Absolutely not. In the history of the Arabian horse, they were originally tent horses who lived in the desert with their masters, especially the mares. And we choose very carefully for our program horses that have that kind of mindset. They want to associate with their kids, they want to be a part of whatever's going on. Um, Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to get these horses to go around the pen and do their jobs, because wherever the instructors are sitting, they want to sit and have scratches and visit rather than just go and do their things. But they're very safe. The reason I think that they're so good for kids is because they bond with their kids. It's amazing to see these mares, even the young ones, protect their kids, and they sort of look after them as though they would if it was their own foal. And these young horses or young kids just, I mean, sometimes they're under their feet, sometimes they're painting these horses in birthday parties, and they just all stand there and they soak up the attention. And if they aren't of that mindset where they want to be with a person, they don't last long in our academy program, because that's one of the things that we want so much to foster is the good-minded and talented Arabian horses that can bond with their humans.
Mhm. So are you many people working here, or how is that going?
Yes, we have 6 full-time instructors, including myself. We have an office manager, a breeding manager, because we have a whole pillar of our program where we breed horses for our lesson program as well as to market. And we have a show string. So I have several grooms whose job it is to keep the horses fit and happy and do all the maintenance and cleaning and keep everything looking the part. So at the end of the day, I think there's about 17 of us.
Wow. And how many horses?
And including breeding horses and foals, where we have about 110 horses. We have
Ooh.
25 that we use actively in the lesson program all the time. And then we have some show horses that step up and teach lessons in between um, when they're going to shows, or the advanced riders who need something to push them a little further will use the show horses for that program.
So you are breeding yourself. Do you use these in in the program later on?
Yes, we do. Several of our homebreds are in the lesson program right now, and several of our homebreds have gone on as young horses to win some of the highest accolades in the Arabian industry. So we're pretty proud of our breeding program, and it's very nice to have a program that produces horses that have so much talent and such good minds that the kids can bring them along themselves. Um, we have 4 young horses right now that are being shown by kids, and they're riding first and schooling second level. Um, all of the work beyond the initial colt starter process for these young horses has been done by their riders. And these girls are 13 and 14 years old and have been riding with us for a couple of years. But the horses are kind and talented, and the kids are growing and are talented. And it's interesting to me because when we take these guys to the shows, most of the horses are getting warmed up by trainers at the shows, and our kids are doing all their own.
Mhm. That's the best way.
For
Absolutely.
sure.
For both horse and human.
For sure. I think that really sets us apart from the average lesson program and show barn here in the US, at least in the Arabian industry, because most of them, at least most of the larger barns, have trainers who school them and warm them up, and then the kids just get on and go show. And our kids, sometimes we have the grooms lunge just because of a time factor, but our kids do that as well. And then they get on and they warm their own horses up, and they practice, and they um, school them before their classes, and they also have lessons after their classes, so that they're developing that relationship with the horse that I think is so critical if you're going to be successful, no matter what your end goal is. And I think if the trainer does that, it's very hard for the student to develop that relationship. Obviously, if the horse is being naughty, we have trainers on staff that can school them and work them through whatever the problem is. But as a general rule, even the kids do that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So you have all kind of people who are riding there. Do you have also handicapped, or you were talking a little about that?
So we do have a few riders who have what I would call minor limitations, uh, or minor challenges. We have a couple of girls who have some muscle disorders. We have one rider who was born without all of the appropriate bones in her arms. We aren't set up to handle really therapeutic riding that requires sidewalkers and extra equipment and, true handicap situations. We do have several students who are on the autism spectrum, but uh, we require that all our riders be at a point where they can follow simple instructions and they can have some good balance and be uh, capable of doing some things on their own. So we start our riders at 4. At that point, they're usually potty trained and they have enough self awareness that they are able to control their balance even on a horseback. And some of our riders that have some emotional or um, autism issues, it's amazing to watch the growth and development of their social skills just for their interactions with the horses. But as I said, we require that they be at least basically communicative and they be able to follow certain simple directions, because we don't have staff that is trained properly to handle riders who have issues, handicaps, or challenges that put them in a situation where they require a lot more than just basic instructions.
Yeah, you were talking about we had a little chat before here, and we were talking about kids' anxiety. You were telling me that you feel that kids are or have more anxiety today.
Yes, that's probably the number one social situation we deal with our riders is anxiety problems. And the kids, in fact, it's to the point where I have a trick that I teach the kids, and some of the ones who are really anxious about whatever situation. We spend a lot of time explaining that the horse is going to be reactive to their anxiety. And depending on the horse, some are very sympathetic and they get calmer and calmer when the kid is anxious. And some of our horses get, they think they're in trouble if the kid is upset, and then the kid gets
Mm,
more upset. And so that makes a vicious cycle. So we spend a lot of time talking about how the kids have to relate to the horses and how the behavior of the horse is going to be affected by what the kid is feeling and thinking when they come to ride. And the kids actually have a pretty good understanding of that. And I've developed a technique for some of these kids who have significant issues, and several of them use this. And I tell them all at the time that they need to leave all of their anxiety, whatever they're worried about, at the gate or at the stall before they get their horse out and start doing whatever it is that they are going to do with their horse. And so I have some kids who have actually got a bag or a satchel, and they take all of that they're worried about and they put it in the bag, and they leave the bag at the stall. They get their horse and they go around and they do their things. And when they come back to their stall, the bag is still sitting there. So whatever they were worried about beforehand is still waiting for them. And if they need it, they can pick it back up and go on again about whatever it is that they're doing. But in most cases, I think um, the ability to set aside those worries, make a physical effort to set aside those worries, after they get a chance to ride and go through their time with the horses, they don't need to pick those anxieties back up again. And it seems to help. Uh, I don't know that it's a technique that will work for every person with anxiety issues, but it seems to help.
mhm. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then you can throw the bag away when they come back.
Yeah, when you don't need it anymore, you can throw the bag away.
Yeah, that's
I think that's
great.
really helped, especially some of my younger kids who, and I don't understand why the kids have so much anxiety at this age. I mean, when I was a kid, my grandma said, "Come back at lunchtime." And in the summer, they just kicked us out to go play in the neighborhood with whoever was there, or go play on the farm with the dogs and the chickens and whatever. So anxiety was never something that was permitted to us, I guess. We certainly didn't have time for any of that. So I don't understand what it is in society that is creating that kind of anxiety these days for all of these kids. But I would say half of my kids don't believe that they're good enough, don't believe that they're capable enough, don't believe that they're talented enough to be riding and doing all the things that they're doing. And I bet a quarter of them are on medication for anxiety issues.
Wow, that's terrifying, I think.
I wonder sometimes if that is a legitimate sample of the population as a whole, but it is terrifying to think about the situations that are making these kids have this anxiety. What I can tell you though is the bond that they develop with the horses over
Mm,
time takes the anxiety away. You know, when your horse is so excited to see you that it leaves its dinner and comes up to the stall front and nickers for you, and whatever you want to do, they just get to go around and do on their horses, and the horses just do it because, well, that's their job, but also because they like the kid and they're taking care of their kid. um, it's easy to see that anxiety melt away from those kids just, a few minutes into the grooming process or a few minutes into the saddle. Um, their whole persona changes and um, and I don't, it's not that the kids weren't happy before, but they were anxious too. And that anxiety just drains away, which I think is really a huge testament to what this partnership between a horse and a human can bring to
mm,
everybody's health and happiness. And I tell my kids all the time, and my adults as well, we don't care what you look like. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you're a pretty rider. I want you to be a safe rider. I want you to be having fun and I want you to learn stuff. Everything else after that is gravy. And I explained to them that the heels down and the posture and all of these things has nothing to do with how I expect you to look and everything to do with how I expect you to proceed in a partnership when communicating with your horse, which I also think is important because so many of these kids here in the rest of their lives, in their ballet and their gymnastics or whatever else they do, that how they look is so critical. And some of these kids are really tall and thin, and some of them not so much. But for the horse, they don't care how they look. The horse only cares if you are nice to them and if you are fair with them and if you feed them.
mm,
They don't care
that's
what you
right.
look like. I mean, you can be green with purple polka dots and the horse doesn't care.
No, that's right. And horses are very therapeutic. They're beautiful to be with when you have anxiety and all these things. Yes.
Very much so. Very much so. I think the positive experience that all of our students of all ages gain from developing a relationship with a horse, the confidence that it brings them, the satisfaction that it brings them, the peace that it brings, makes everything else easier to deal with, whatever that everything else is.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and when you can help kids or animals, it's fantastic. It's a good feeling that you know that you're doing something good, and the horses is.
Yes, it makes me smile, and I tell my kids all the time, if I see improvement from the beginning of the lesson to the end of the lesson, even if it's just a small thing, then it makes me happy. If I see you guys smiling through your lesson when you were upset beforehand, it makes me happy. If I see you learn something that we've been struggling with for a long time and all of a sudden the light bulb comes on, it makes me happy. So these are small things, right? But these small things, uh, especially for the kids with anxiety, are goals that they can meet. And being able to meet small goals means that they are willing to try the bigger goals, at least in my experience. And so that's been a huge success and motivator for us. And it's been amazing to me to watch some of these kids come from very, very closed in and very quiet and going to happy and successful and progressing rapidly down the path of going to a show or going to a big ride or something that is something that they weren't sure they were going to manage to get to before.
Mm. Yeah, that's fantastic. Anything else you want to tell about?
No, I think that is probably the most important thing that we have going on in our program right now. We spend a lot of time as a unit working together so that even if one instructor can't be there and another instructor can, that there's continuity, which I also think is important. But yeah, that's pretty much the biggest situation that we have to deal with.
Yeah, that's great. And where can people find you if they want to get in contact with you?
Yes, we are at Magic Moments Stables in Houston. We have a website. It's www.magicmoments, moments, stable.com. And we also have a Facebook page, also the same thing, Magic Moments Stable. And if you leave messages on our Facebook page or on our website, we are happy to answer any questions that you have and happy to have you come out and have a tour of our facility.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today. Nice to hear about your Arabians. I love Arabians. They are beautiful. So,
Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting with you guys.
yeah, and thank you to you out there who have been listening to this. And please subscribe. And if you want to uh, be in our membership group, you are very welcome. We have a lot of things in that one, and we have the links outside. So thank you, and we'll see you next Sunday again. Bye bye.